Hi, this is Brandy Shantz, and you're listening to Living Chronic. Today, I'm speaking with Melissa Schuster, friend, former Army officer, former ROTC buddy, and a chronic illness warrior. She was diagnosed with narcolepsy type I and recently medically retired from the Army. So, welcome. We have a lot in common. Obviously, we both kind of left the Army with some things that we did not come to the Army with. That's for certain.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
So, we'll start just talking about what was your journey like when you became just getting the diagnosis. You know, how did that journey look?
I would say that I am one of the few people that COVID actually saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I ended up actually getting a diagnosis. I knew for the longest time something was wrong, but couldn't get an answer as to what.
Mm-hmm.
So I contracted COVID August of 2020, OG strain, and it tried to kill me for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I was a long hauler. I had a really bad time with bronchitis-like symptoms for around 6 months. I randomly spiked fevers here and there. It was not good. So through that, I was seeing a pulmonologist. And so my last appointment to be cleared from seeing the pulmonologist, he asked that one simple question: how are you sleeping?
Mm.
And I don't think any doctor had ever asked me that before.
Now that you say it, I don't think I've ever been asked either, really.
Right. And so not thinking anything about it, he come to find out he was a sleep specialist. That's his passion. He asks all of his clients. And so, I'm explaining to him, I'm tired all the time. He's like, do you wake up rested? And I was like, no, who wakes up rested? He's like, that's not normal. And in my mind, I'm thinking that's being a grown-up. I'm in the Army. I have a stressful job within the Army. I'm a parent. My son is having trouble in school. My marriage is falling apart. I'm stressed out. Yeah, I'm not going to be sleeping. He's like, no, you're supposed to wake up rested from a good night's sleep. And so we went through the series of questions. I told him that I know, and looking back on it now, how ridiculous it was to not say anything about it. But you don't know how you sleep is abnormal until, because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about sleep. And so I told him that I know that I'm falling asleep because I start dreaming. And he's like, bro, those are two processes that shouldn't be going on at the
Right.
And so he sent me for a sleep study. They do the home study first, where they put the little machine on you. Because of course they test for sleep apnea. That's more common. If we can knock sleep apnea out of the way, if it's sleep apnea, cool, we'll get you CPAP. You'll be on your merry way.
Right.
So I did the at-home study, no sleep apnea. So they brought me into the lab the night into day. And so I'm sitting with the lab tech, and she's explaining that, if we detect sleep apnea during the night test, we're going to send you home in the morning, get you CPAP, get you started with your treatment. If not, then we're going to go into the daytime study. So I went through the night, no sleep apnea, again, into the day. In the daytime, they put you down for 5 20-minute naps, I believe 2 hours apart.
Oh, wow.
And I met the markers for narcolepsy by, it was very obvious by nap number 3. So they were like, we're going to stop torturing you, send you home. It's narcolepsy. There's no need to do the last 2 naps.
Right.
Have what we need for the study. And so that's, how I finally got diagnosed after potentially decades.
Well, that seems to be kind of a recurrent theme, no matter what illness you have. We go to doctors, we feel something's wrong, but we keep pushing through. Maybe the doctors say, I don't know what's wrong with you. It seems to be a lot of us here, at least at one point, maybe you're just having some mental health issues.
Yeah. And I get it, because narcolepsy is extremely rare.
Mm-hmm.
Average doctor is not well versed in it. And it does look like depression, anxiety, PTSD. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you go back through my medical records, like the markers are there, the insomnia, the complaints of PMDD, depression, like all of that was there. And so, yeah, if you're stressed out and you're waking up exhausted, you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, the most logical explanation is depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was being treated for major depressive disorder for a very long time. And I would start a med, I'm going to therapy for years. The medication would work for a time and then it doesn't. And so I switched to a new med, and nothing ever really got at the problem. Like, I never felt good.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously fast forward to, September of, was it 21? It's narcolepsy.
But how does that feel to finally have a diagnosis and know what it is?
It's great, because like, I'm not losing my mind. Like, and I'm, what I can say about me is I'm never not going to go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got to a point where I'm like, am I a malingerer? Like, is it all in my head? Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly going to the doctor. Like, are people going to start looking at me like I'm crazy
Mm-hmm.
and what have you? But I'm like, I don't feel good. I'm going to tell you that I don't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Good.
I wish I had kept a running log of copays for every time I went
Both.
to see how much money I've spent over years and years trying to help myself.
But good for you. So often, many of us just stop. I've done it myself. I think, well, you know what? I must be a malingerer. It must be in my head. Let me just take care of this by myself. And then, things get really bad. And then, well, way too late. So kudos to you for actually advocating for yourself and saying, no, this isn't in my head. I'm going to the doctor. I'm going to tell you what's wrong.
Well, thank you.
Because a lot of people just can't do that, So after that, one of the things, I talk about all the time is what happens when you're having difficulty going to work. And of course, you and I both know when you're in the Army, they expect you to have a certain clearance of medical, otherwise you're out of there. What was it like coming to that point where you realized that it was time to medically retire?
Luckily, I had built a very solid reputation before the downward spiral. Because between COVID and the narcolepsy, like, I pretty much wasn't functioning at that point. I had coworkers that picked up my slack. Everybody knew something was wrong. Like, I went to my leadership. I went to the EAP. And I was like, look, I don't know what's happening, but like, I'm going through a crappy divorce. I'm sick all the time. I can't maintain any longer. And so I was covered by that, and just working with my leadership to try to find me a place to go. And so it was the fact that I had built a solid reputation really saved me in the end, from just being, cast aside and I'm just failing and she needs to go.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what's difficult for most people is, how do I approach this now that I'm becoming ill and I can't perform the way I once did? What is it that's the next step? And, finding that next step can be difficult. You finally retired from the Army medically, July 2022. So it's been almost a year. How has been living with the narcolepsy and post-Army life?
I am doing a lot better. Like, what is interesting is now that, the fog of sleep deprivation is lifting, I had no idea how bad off I actually was.
Mm-hmm.
I remember after my diagnosis, I'm sitting at my desk and I get an email from a soldier saying, "Hey, ma'am, I'm back from school. It was great. Here's my certificate. So, I graduated." I do not remember sending her to school.
Oh, wow.
Not remember that whole process at all. Just out of the blue, I get an email saying, "Hey, I'm back from school." And so, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what other information? Like, I was on autopilot, that I don't, or I'm going to find out in the future that I did, but I don't remember,
Mm-hmm.
in such a deep fog. So yeah, life is getting better. Like, I'm still not okay. I've only been on what I say the med that's saving my life, since April of 2022. And so,
Okay.
there's been obviously several med changes to figure out like what works best for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still have a ways to go, but it is definitely a whole different world. Um, and then looking at the lifestyle changes to help, obviously to change jobs because the stress from that old job like vastly exacerbated my condition. Um, and so now it's just trying to unpack my internalized ableism, that there is a good chance that I won't ever be back to quote unquote normal. Um,
Right.
and I can't do it all. And I do need to pace myself. And yeah, looking at like what I've been doing lately is really looking at things that irritate me. Because what I've discovered is the things that irritate me are things that are actually draining what little bit of energy that I have.
Right.
And so I'm chipping away at, like, if there's something that I hate to do, more than likely it's not because it's that thing, it's because of the narcolepsy. That at
Right.
some point it's draining energy stores that I don't have. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so those are kind of like little things I'm looking at. Like, I have a shower chair now. Um, Getting out of bed in the morning before meds is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So I sit down in the shower now. Small things like that, like a bench at the foot of the bed to sit down to get dressed.
Yep.
Right now, because my medication that I take at night is a liquid, it has to be mixed. Like, that irritates me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something about how I mix or need to do that medication that's not irritating. It's draining energy somewhere. Or is it I'm ready to go to bed? And so how can I move my routine around so that that's not frustrating me?
Mm-hmm. I think that's the hardest part, learning what your new life looks like and being okay with it. Because we put so much value into being high producers, super everything, super mom, super wife, super employee, super, volunteer. We always have to be super. And we forget that we're just as good of people when we're not super.
Right. Yes. Like, I am worthy because I'm a human being, not
Mm-hmm.
what I can do for others.
Exactly. Exactly. And even if you're not the top guy at work, you're still a valuable human being and a very valuable member of the team. Even if you can't work 80 hours a week, like your coworker who goes on every trip and, stays till 8, 9 o'clock every single night. That is hard to learn. It's really, I forget. I have to tell myself every day, wake up, you're still a valuable person. Just because you can't run today does not mean you're lesser than. Just because you can't do what you normally would in a day doesn't mean you're a lesser than person. And it's difficult.
It really is. It really is.
I think it's the hardest. I mean, there's a lot of hard things. That and asking for help, knowing when to ask for help. I always want to just be self sufficient. I would say those are probably
Right.
two of the most difficult ones. Like, I don't want your help. I want to do it by myself. And then it's too late. And I'm like, well, okay, fine. Somebody please come in and help me.
Yep.
It's
I felt that so hard.
yeah. Well, and also, it's just interesting to me. I love that I started this podcast just because it's so helpful to just reach out to other people going through things and realize that most of us are going through the same stuff. We have this, there might be something different with our disease, but we have the same thoughts, the same issues, the same, struggles in many ways.
Mhm.
And one of them we were talking about earlier before we started is trauma. And nobody talks about it. Nobody tells you that you're going to go through a level of trauma associated with this experience in your life. And how do you get through it? Especially at a time where mental health care is so difficult to come.
It is. It is super difficult. And, I am very privileged in the fact that I have decent health insurance. Because
Yes.
I couldn't imagine, I'm in a support group for folks with narcolepsy, and there are folks that are begging to get on the medications that I'm on.
Yep.
And they can't because insurance won't cover it. And the medication that I take to sleep at night is $12,000 a month without insurance. So
Mhm.
I'm definitely privileged in that I can afford the medication that's saving my life right now.
Yes.
About to start a med to bring me up during the day. Same issue with other folks in the group. They can't get on it. And it's one of the best things out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sucks. It really does.
Yeah. There's things you learn you probably never would have known had you never become sick. And that's just it. The things that I did not encounter until I became a Crohn's patient and the medication, 1,000%. At one point, I switched from my TRICARE to the Johns Hopkins family plan because I thought that sounds really good. Johns Hopkins is in the name. But what I did not realize is that's a private insurance.
Mm.
And private insurance likes to make money, not spend money. So as soon as I switched over to them, they denied my medications. And I thought, well, you know what? While we're fixing this, I'll just go pay for it out of pocket. No big deal. I'm doing okay. And I walk into the Walgreens and say, yeah, I'm just going to pick this up on my own today. The insurance is denying it. And next thing I know, I hear that'll be $10,000. And I thought, are you kidding me? What planet are you on? $10,000. But that's the problem. So many of us with chronic illness, if you don't have great insurance, that's what you're facing. Staring at a cash register where they're looking at you and saying, that'll be $12,000, ma'am.
And you're like, from where? From where?
What am I going to do with that? It's frustrating when you have to learn these things where it's difficult to get medications without great insurance, where you learn that, there's just not, you have these privileges you don't think about.
Right.
You really do. Health insurance, a roof over your head, even when you're feeling sick and can't get to work, the ability to not get to work because missing a day doesn't mean missing rent. All these things that you just don't really think about until you get into this life and you realize, oh my goodness, there are people who are right now in severe pain and can't move or just so fatigued they can't, do anything, but they have to figure it out because if they miss work,
Yep,
that they're going to lose the house. So the little things we learn to be thankful for, I'm still shocked each and every day. Each and every day that goes by, the things that I say, thank goodness I have this in my life.
Yep. It's, I was just.
Well, it's difficult, that's for certain. I like to think that there's always hope. We always talk about hope. Things do get better. You always find a way. There's always something. I like to ask everybody, what do you wish you knew when you were first diagnosed, or even maybe when you were first having symptoms? What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Um, that I wish I knew how important managing your lifestyle is.
Mm.
Um, because it's been hard to change bad habits. Like I love to fall asleep on the couch watching TV. I do.
Mhm.
But I'm on a strict bedtime routine. I am strict with my medications because I function better on a
Mhm.
schedule. Um, you don't really think in your younger years. So I'm thinking about my 20s where I was being diagnosed with depression, anxiety, PTSD, all of these other conditions, that how much I could have helped myself had I taken better care of myself.
Yes.
A lot of managing my symptoms is diet, exercise, sleep. Like, you know, the fitness triad. um, like maybe it wouldn't have gotten so bad to the point where I was barely functioning. I don't know. But to consider how important is taking care of yourself to any disease or disorder. Um,
Mhm.
I wish I had better habits earlier in life.
I think we all do. I think we all do. Um, but you're right. That's definitely, there's some things I can't help, but there are some things I can. And when I take care of myself, I get the right amount of sleep, I eat right and exercise, it really makes a difference in how well I function, especially if I'm having a flare or the disease is very active. It's just amazing how that those few little things just change everything about how you feel.
Yeah. And if I could have not learned the workaholism,
Oh, that's all of us. We live in the United
I
States.
know
We were in the Army. Mm-mm. We no, we live. You're right. That's it. What's difficult. That's what makes it so difficult. I'm sure if I had people on this show from Europe, they would probably have a different perspective. I think it's especially hard for us because, again, you know, and I live in the DC area. It's like the playland for, the straight A student who's type A plus plus plus, who's, not happy unless, they've reached the pinnacle of their career by 45.
yeah,
So it's so difficult for us to think, instead of staying late tonight, I think I'm just going to go home and rest and take care of myself. Or instead of, working Saturday and Sunday this weekend, maybe I'll just take the weekend off and try to relax.
yeah.
It's because it makes you think you're a lesser person, and society tells you you're a lesser person.
Oh,
Oh, you worked 40 hours this week? Must be nice. No, that's not what you meant. But I do have a disease, and it's important that I dial it back sometimes.
yep.
I wish we could. That's one of the many things I wish we could really change. Working a million hours does not make you a better human being,
It really doesn't.
and often it doesn't make you better at your job.
It doesn't, but it makes you more stressed out.
That it does. That
I
it
like
does. It's
making
unhealthy.
that you really should be making sacrifices, like time with your family. Like,
Hmm.
if I could take back being at work to be at home with my son more, I would. But the expectation is like you don't have a family in the Army. Household six is taking care of everything. And I was like, there was one time I was sitting in a meeting with a very senior officer had made the comment about something. Oh, the wife at home will take care of that. I'm like, I don't have a wife at home. My husband, I don't have a wife at home to take care of that. And so it's that culture that the expectation is you have a spouse at home that's taking care of
Yes.
everything. And I didn't. So, and I don't now. Um, so yeah, when my son is out sick from school, I'm out sick because he's out sick from school. Like there's no oh, my husband can take care of that. No.
No, you're right. That's a whole nother show sometimes, it's military, it's very different than the civilian community. Here in DC, the first thing that I actually loved when I first came here is I realized this is not the military, which has this very old, it's almost like going back in time sometimes. I never know how there are so many wives that don't have jobs. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, this is almost strange at this point, but it's expected to have this wife that stays at home and takes care of the kids in the house. And then, you know, typically the man goes out and works. And you remember what, being a woman in the Army and an officer, they almost don't know how to deal with that sometimes, especially when it comes to, you're not going to have that role necessarily. Of course, I do meet some stay-at-home dads that are, taking on that role, but largely, where do we meet our husbands?
In the military.
In the Army. So, and it was always hard trying to bring that together in of itself. No, sir, I don't have anybody to take care of that at home. My husband's actually in Afghanistan right now, or, it's just the life of a woman in the Army. So we get it kind of double on that because we are expected to do everything in the Army, whereas in DC, everybody expects that your spouse works. They just ask what does your husband do for a living? What does your wife do for a living? This concept of household six just isn't there, which makes it a lot easier because they know if, there's something wrong, one of you two's got to take care of it. And it's just, well, sorry, but my husband took care of all of this last time, so it's my turn.
Yep.
Or, works really crazy for me. Would you mind taking this? And then when the roles are reversed, then I'll pick up the slack. So it is a much easier environment. And I don't think a lot of people who have not served in the military, particularly as a woman, I don't think they understand that, there's this whole organization where it's expected that you just have this person that's
right
doing anything. It's done.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother problem. But it probably makes us worse at what we do, because we were always expected to be here. So when the doctor tells us to come down to here, it's like I don't even understand that concept.
Sure don't.
I was already here as an American, but then I was here because I was in the Army and a woman. So learning how to calm down is difficult.
It's really difficult. Like when I'm working with, my therapist right now is how to manage my workload by how I'm feeling. Like, yes, I need to offload some things on the days that I'm not feeling well, and how do I make the decision as to what that is, what I'm back. But she's like, you absolutely have to. You can't keep up that same pace. You need to be able to allow your responsibilities to fluctuate based on how you're feeling. And so that concept is wild to me to try to figure out. What I keep on my plate and what comes off has been difficult.
Mm-hmm. It is for all of us. And I don't know if we'll ever perfect it, but we keep getting better.
Yeah, it's true. Day by day, I learned something new about myself. I learned something new about, and I want to make sure I say that, narcolepsy is pretty cool, honestly. The research behind it is phenomenal. And so it's a very unique, interesting condition. But it does have its fun side effects. And so, like, one of the things I'm very proud of is, like, I can fall asleep on the plane before we even taxi down the runway. I consider that my power. Like,
that is a superpower.
I can fall asleep anywhere. I don't have to worry about that part of life. Another symptom that a lot of us have is excessive dreaming. Like I dream whole Lord of the Rings style movies at night, and they're pretty flippin' awesome. um, but like, the meds tamp that down.
Mhm.
I'm not close to waking all night long like I was in the beginning. But like if I want to, like if I want to have a glass of wine or two on a Friday night, like I won't take my meds that night and
Mhm.
come back the full, I'm traveling through space trying to save planets in my sleep. And so, there's a lot of kind of cool things that I experience because of it. Even though, knowing that I'm falling asleep because I'm dreaming is a bit odd, it's funny. And so there is a lot of kind of bright side that I make sure I acknowledge and I look at when it comes to my narcolepsy.
Mhm. I like that you take a bright side to it and look at it as a positive, because so often it's easy to get trapped in your negative feelings of why is this happening to me? I cannot believe I have this disease.
Yeah.
So seeing that positive, cool side, I think, is really great. That's something that I think takes a lot of people years to do, if they ever do. I have never found the positive side of mine yet.
And there are things that before I even knew that I would do because it was fun. Like I know that if I fall asleep on the couch with the TV on, I'm pulling in to my dreams whatever is playing on the television. And so I
Mhm.
do that for fun. Knock out for a nap on a Saturday afternoon, not realizing that it was narcolepsy, but it was just fun. It was cool.
Yeah.
I love to nap. It is one of my favorite things to do.
Mm.
I just wish, I could have a job where I could not have to be awake for an 8-hour stretch.
I know. I know. I have to say, when I went into real estate, I mean, having different diseases, of course, but one of the benefits was if I just really did not feel well, needed a nap, and I get nutritional imbalances. So I used to joke, am I narcoleptic? Because I'd just be sitting here and then just crash, just down. Um, but because of that, being in real estate, if I'm feeling that way, I'm like, I'm just going to take a 2 hour nap. That's it. I'll move things around, but I'm my own boss. So, just, hey, we're just going to have to push our meetings back 2 hours if that's okay with you guys. Thank you. And then I just take a nap. And I have to say that's probably the best part of real estate,
Nice.
without a doubt. Without a doubt. For everybody out there who's ever had to deal with falling asleep because of severe fatigue or whatever, that's where it's at. The I'm taking a nap in the middle of the day statement.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your journey. It's been great learning from you, and hopefully we can get you back on the podcast again.
Yeah, no, this was fun. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and you've been listening to Living Chronic.